Hey guys, I'm JanetOnOccasion, and today we're going to do, well, some more campaign lore play. We're on episode 3 now, so we've spoken about Elven, we've spoken a bit about Yvresse, and yeah, we've sort of talked about the hierarchy a bit, you know, just a quick, brief rundown of some of their gods, you know, things like that. So we're going to continue talking about the sort of hierarchy of the elves. We talked about the Phoenix King, but what about the people sort of under the Phoenix King? You know, the different nobles and princes. So we're going to talk about that, about now. The noble families of Ulthuan have led the High Elves through times of peace and conflict for thousands of years. They pride themselves on a deep sense of honour, as well as the mastery of both diplomacy and war as an art form. The High Elves believe an existence lived without precision to be hollow and scarcely preferable to death. Any elf prince is just at home fighting with a sword in bloody melee, as he is loosing deathly accurate arrows from afar, or even dictating the strategy of a campaign from a greater distance still. Although they are loyal to the Phoenix King, even unto death, all High Elves of noble blood love intrigue and politics. Unfortunately, this sometimes means the armies are trusted to individuals based on political alignment, rather than on ability. Fortunately, these instances are rare. When the safety of Ulthuan is at stake, few Phoenix Kings have suffered such idiocy for long. There is no shortage of brave and talented commanders among the Azur, and courtly intrigue seldom prevents such individuals from harnessing their skills. Depending on their wealth and the kingdom of their birth, the princes of Ulthuan fight in many different ways. Those of Tiranoc typically do battle from the back of swift-wheeled chariots, while the lords of Laverne often stand, spear and bow in hand, amidst the ranks of the Sea Guard. Those with the greatest wealth might ride upon a great eagle or griffin, or, in the case of the mightiest princes of Calador, upon a dragon. Such steeds are invariably a symbol of status, as well as lending a brutal advantage in the midst of battle. Wherever they hail from, High Elf commanders are incredibly dangerous, able to strike down their foes with unmatched swiftness. They are equally deadly with a lance, spear, halberd, or longbow, able to penetrate even the most resolute defense with a spear thrust, or shoot a foe through the eye while riding at full gallop. Princes of the highest rank even wield weapons of legend, magical heirlooms fashioned upon Vol's forge, and held by their families for hundreds, if not thousands of years. For many families, ownership of such an artifact constitutes their line's right to regal status. Any prince who bears one to battle will therefore fight all the harder, for he and his family can ill afford for the blade to be lost to the foe, or be dishonoured by defeat or cowardice. Yet, whilst a magical weapon might make a noble a prince, it does not make him a general. This comes from his keen mind, his courage, and his sense of duty. Thus does Ulthuan forge the finest commanders in the world, leaders able to read the ebb and flow of unfolding battle, knowing when to commit forces, when to retreat, and when Ulthuan must call for the ultimate sacrifices from her defenders. So now, we're about to besiege Yvresse. So basically I want to talk about Eltharion a little bit more. Because, yeah, once we take that, we've taken the whole, you know, territory, or we're going to war with someone else. So, yeah, so I want to finish that stuff off. So, first we're going to go back to the year, between the year 260 and 262. But that's of the reign of Finnabar, so that's like, 200 years ago-ish. So, anyway, there's actually an assault on Nagarond, which we kind of talked about very little when we were giving the sort of summary of Eltharion. But this is him going to Nagarond, because he's livid. So, this year marked the first occasion on which the High Elves mounted a successful campaign against Nagarond. Eltharion of Yvresse led the army, his deeds earning great glory and renown across Ulthuan. Many garrisons were taken by surprise and razed to the ground. Thousands of Dark Elf warriors were cut down. Patrols of Illyrian Reavers worked in concert with Shadow Warrior bands to ambush enemy messengers and sow terror deep into Nagaroth. When at last Eltharion's army reached Nagarond, the boldest elves clad themselves in captured garb and entered the city, opening the gates from within. The waiting High Elves poured into the city and ran riot, burning buildings and slaying all they found. Alas, in the hour of victory, disaster struck. Eltharion was wounded by a witch elf's poisoned blade. It seems that Eltharion would pay the same price as all the others who had chanced their arm against the Witch King's citadel. That his death would follow glory, rather than defeat, was little consolation. But, guess what? That's not the end of him. No, he went home. Unfortunately, it was around the same time that Grom the Paunch had turned up in Yvresse, which, again, we'd mentioned in brief before. But, while we're besieging Yvresse, I think it makes sense to actually talk about a previous, well, ruin of Yvresse, I guess. So we're going to talk about that. So this actually takes place immediately after he gets back from Naggarond. So it's actually the year 262, or at least the 262nd year of Finnebar's reign. You know, that's how the elves do time. Anyway, so it's about 100 years ago. So this year marked the greatest calamity to occur in Yvresse since the Sundering. Out of the east, borne by storm, sailed a great fleet of goblin ships. At their head came Grom, a goblin king of massive girth and grand ambition. He had led the cities of the old world in ruins and now brought his war to a new land. The goblins made landfall at Carn Lothal and marched southwards, burning as they went. Thousands died as the war drew further inland. That was not the worst of it. As the goblins advanced, their shaman, Blacktooth, ordered that the ancient waystones be toppled, that he might absorb their hidden magics. With each waystone that fell, magic that should have been siphoned into the great vortex ran wild across the hills of Yvresse. Forests blazed with green fire. The earth was racked with tremors. Demons burst from the mists and rivers choked with filth. Yet still the goblins came on, Grom mad with conquest, Blacktooth drunk with power. Moranion of Yvresse attempted to halt the goblin advance at the keep of Attil, but his army was soon overwhelmed and Moranion himself was slain. At the moment, in the far north of Ulthuan, Moranion's son, Eltharion, yeah, you've heard of him, lay close to death, fevered dreams haunting his slumbers. The poisoned wound he had received in Naggarond still gnawed at his spirit, for none amongst his host had the skill to counter the dark elf venom. With a start, Eltharion opened his eyes and beheld a pale apparition of his father. The shadowy figure was bloodied and mangled by blade marks and arrows, and Eltharion knew his father was dead. The spirit spoke in hollow tones, telling him of Grom, and how the goblin had destroyed Attil and defiled his lands. The ghost told how the greenskins had defiled every waystone in their path, and how the magical energies they normally contained were wrecking the land. If the waystone of Tor Yvresse were to fall too, the spirit foretold, then the resulting devastation would be unimaginable. Meanwhile, Grom's army had carved ruin through Yvresse. Upon Yvrane Plain, Yvrane Plain. That's a fun thing. Anyway, sorry, it's serious. Yeah, Grom's coming. Anyway, the High Elves made yet another stand. Warrior for warrior, the Elves were more than a match for Grom's Gobbos, but the Greenskins' sheer numbers carried them deep into the Elf lines. There, at the heart of the battle, Grom's axe hacked apart Argalen, Moranion's younger son. With a great bellow of victory, Grom lifted Argalen's corpse high above his head and hurled it into the defenders' ranks. So disheartened were they by the hero's fall that the elves fled, and the battle turned into a rout. Fleeing elves were cut down as they dropped their shields and ran for the safety of Tor Yvresse. The greater part of Tor Yvresse's defenders had been slain in battle, and those that remained were sick with grief, yet still the city held for 4 days. 4 days of bombardment by stone, skull and sorcery, 4 days without hope of survival. Even when the goblin assault finally came, the elves of Tor Yvresse did not falter, but gripped their spears tighter and made sure that every arrow counted. So it was that when Eltharion's army finally arrived, it found the great city in flames, its streets full of the slain. Here and there, outnumbered High Elves fought the Greenskin horde with desperate fury, yet no matter how bravely they fought, the Elves were losing, street by street. Every goblin that fell was but a drop of water in a vile sea. Above the blazing buildings, the shaman Blacktooth flew upon a great wyvern, blasting the city with foul magic. Moments before, he had slain the warden of Tor Yvresse, and now sought to take the power of the city's waystone for his own. Before the first eagle ship had reached the docks, Eltharion took the back of his mighty griffin, Stormwing, great name for a griffin, anyway, and soared into the fray. Moments later, the first ramps crashed down onto blood-slick docks, and hundreds of elf warriors rushed ashore to join the fight. As the battle for the ruined streets began to turn, Eltharion let cry a mighty challenge, and charged directly at the shaman. Stormwing raked and clawed at the wyvern, opening great rents in its scaly flank. Blacktooth bludgeoned Eltharion with ethereal fists of green magic, leaving the elf reeling in his saddle. With a guttural snarl, the shaman prepared a final deadly sorcery to end Eltharion, but the spell was never completed. Eltharion's warriors had seized the Warden's Tower and made the invocation of ending, temporarily becalming the winds of magic. Seizing his chance, Eltharion struck out and took off Blacktooth's head with a single blow. With that act, the Greenskin attack faltered, and Eltharion's vengeful troops swept the enemy from the city. Grom first tried to rally his fleeing army, but, after a moment's thought, shrugged and joined the fleeing masses. Eltharion did not stop to savour the victory, but instead went with 4 of his bravest warriors to the Warden's Tower. There they wrestled with the power of the Waystone, seeking to stabilise the magics that were ravaging Yvresse. Nobody knows what took place within those walls, but in the morning only Eltharion emerged alive, his face more stern than ever. The following morning, not even the sunrise nor the cheering crowds of the victorious High Elves could force a smile from him. He was elected Warden of Tor Yvresse in recognition of his feats, but from then, the haunted hero is forever known as Eltharion the Grim. So that wasn't perfectly timed. We're still taking Yvresse, but you know the battle will be done soon. So I'm gonna call that a win. So now we're actually gonna sort of backtrack again. I like to go back and forth a bit, you know, try and fill in the gaps, space stuff out, you know, that we can see on the campaign. But anyway, we do actually have the Shrine of Asuryan, and I want to go into a bit more detail about who Asuryan is. Not too much, but a bit more, so you can help. So I can help you understand who Asuryan is. I mean, he's the big boy, right? He's the big god, the big one at the top. So it makes sense to talk about him. Asuryan, the Creator. The symbol of Asuryan is the phoenix, the firebird of legend. He is the Emperor of the Heavens, the oldest and greatest of all the gods. He is the Creator and the eternal flame, the giver of life. Rests in his hand. The High Elves believe that it is Asuryan's purpose and plan that they follow in mortal life and beyond. Whether this is true or not is impossible to say, for Asuryan speaks seldom to his fellow gods, and hardly ever to the elves. Asuryan dwells alone in a great pyramid atop the heavens, and observes the world from his diamond throne. No mortal has ever seen his face, and thus the statues of him always bear a mask. The mask is divided into 2 halves, one white and the other black, symbolising Asuryan's role as the keeper of balance. Asuryan is the judge between the disputes of the gods, and rarely meddles in the affairs of the elves. Indeed, few mortal deeds or plights are significant enough to attract his attention. However, legend tells that it is Asuryan who touches the minds of each new Phoenix King in Ulthuan, when he passes through the flames of Asuryan, in order to better judge their worthiness for the tasks ahead. So, I actually have a bit of a theory for Asuryan, which I don't know if it's been confirmed actually, one way or the other, but it says that he sits alone in a great pyramid at the top of the heavens. So, some sort of flying pyramid.
A true
Pyramids much like the ones that the lizardmen have, and you know, their ships that they turned up in. Yeah? Maybe? Maybe he's an old one. Just a thought, but it makes sense if he's the creator, because it was the old ones that, you know, sort of, or at least the Slan, you know, at the behest of the old ones, that raised the elves from, you know, the sort of lesser race that they were originally, you know, on the planet. So, yeah, and it was the Slan, the old Slan, as they were called in earlier editions, actually just the old ones, I guess, later. Yeah, the old ones and the old Slan were the same up until you realised that Slan were different to old ones when the Lizardmen books came out. So, you know, there's a bit of a thing there. But anyway, in the earlier elf books, it says, you know, the old Slan taught them magic and, you know, all the rest of it. So I do like the idea of Asuryan actually being, you know, a god. He's actually one of the old ones who helped, you know, build, you know, the elves as they are now. And they're still worshipping him, and they still go, yeah, he's in some pyramid. But they don't realise that he's actually just some, you know, something that came to the planet and meddled, I guess. Because that's kind of what the old ones did, let's be honest. So yeah, Asuryan, sitting in a pyramid. Possibly an old one. Who knows? You know, guys? Whatever. It's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. But anyway, moving on. So we're still going to, you know, talk about Asuryan-y stuff. We're going to talk about Phoenix Guard. Because I do actually have some Phoenix Guard as a garrison now. You know, in the, what's it called? The Shrine of Asuryan, you know. So I kind of want to talk about them. Because it's going to be ages. They're a 5th tier unit, so it's going to be a heck of a long time before I can recruit them. I might even be done with the series before I can. So I want to get it out of the way, because they're great units, they're so cool. So we're going to talk about the Phoenix Guard. So, the Phoenix Guards are the guardians of the Shrine of Asuryan. See, told you. The Great Pyramid Temple in the Sea of Dreams. Deep within lies the Chamber of Days. On its ancient walls, it is said, are the histories of past, present, and future, etched in words of fire. Legend tells that any who behold that wall shall forever be cursed with knowledge of their own death. It's pretty grim. The Phoenix Guards do not utter a word. It is forbidden for those who have seen the secrets of time to speak of them, and all who do All who do so take a magical vow of silence, from which they can never be released. Viewed by many as a curse, this vow is but part of a broader dedication that each Phoenix Guard makes to Asuryan, a covenant that fills the Creator God's chosen warriors with a portion of his almighty power. Thus do the Phoenix Guards benefit from divine protection that no sorcery or blade can easily breach, and know a sense of purpose that transcends their mortal origins. As the sworn warriors of Asuryan, the Phoenix Guard lie beyond the rule of nobles and princes. Only the Phoenix King, the vessel of Asuryan's will, can command them. Indeed, they often act as the king's personal emissaries. Which sounds, bizarre, being emissaries, until you actually finish the sentence. Sorry me, I'm being, I'm being I'm being a bit hasty. They're personal emissaries upon the battlefield, which makes more sense, because if they can't talk, they'd be terrible emissaries. Anyway, sorry. Taken by many elves as a sign that, even though the Phoenix King himself cannot be present at the battle, it is never far from his thoughts. When their lord orders them to a war, the Phoenix Guard are grim and resolute, clad in ornate armour, and armed with tall ceremonial halberds that can cleave a foe from top to tail in a single well-aimed blow. Ooh. Anyway, while their stony quiet is unnerving, the aura of godly might that surrounds them is far more horrifying. Their eyes blaze with a fiery intensity born of unshakable faith in the Creator God of the Elves, and the air around a regiment of Phoenix Guard literally throbs with the raw power of Asuryan. Any who would stand in their way are assailed by an overwhelming sense of dread. Regiments of Phoenix Guard are always found where the fighting is fiercest and victory hardest won, for their gift allows them to see confluences and crux points upon the battlefield that lie hidden to mortal eyes. Each warrior knows his appointed hour of death, but none seek to delay that fatal moment. Whether battle brings a victory or defeat, life or death, the Phoenix Guard fight on without fear. That is rad, let's be honest. Yeah, Phoenix Guard they're scary, right? They're just seen as, they're very elite infantry in the game, sure, but it's quite hard to sort of invoke that real sense of what they are, I think, in a game where, you're usually zoomed out so they put specs on the battlefield. But it's pretty damn cool, sort of to hear about them, what they're like. It's kind of cool. So anyway, also they're the anointed of Asuryan. So they're sort of the Phoenix Guard heroes, I guess. So, in both matters, martial and spiritual, the Phoenix Guard take their lead from the anointed of Asuryan. These learned sages were once Phoenix Guards themselves, but over the centuries have chosen to immerse themselves in Asuryan's teachings. Much of their existence is spent within the Chamber of Days, learning the lessons of past and future. Only when destiny stands upon a tipping point will an anointed of Asuryan leave the shrine. Sent thither to bear witness. Thither is a very odd word. It's very, fanciful. Very old. So, interesting to see the word thither. Anyway, sent thither to bear witness on the Creator God's behalf, and to bring hope to his mortal children. Where the anointed tread, the doubts and fears of their allies vanish, like mist on the wind. Blows that should prove fatal are turned aside at the last moment. Enemy axes shatter on contact with shields, and dark sorceries collapse inward at the moment of casting. So, they're pretty cool. These are scary guys. So, yeah, that's the Phoenix Guard. So you can see now we're actually at war again. We're actually fighting Kothic, but I'm not going to talk about Kothic just yet. I want to sort of wrap up stuff with the, Asuryan thing, because it's, we kind of took that in the end of episode 1, I think. So I kind of want to wrap that up. We were a bit distracted by Yvresse, the cool place that is. So we're going to go on to Kothic, in probably the end of this episode to the maybe next episode. We'll find out. Anyway, so next off, Shrine of Asuryan. It isn't just home to the Phoenix Guard. No, there's also some other cool unit that sort of resides there, and that is the Phoenixes. And, they're cool, right? They're Phoenixes, so let's hear about them. So, the youngest ones are the Flamespire Phoenixes. So, the Phoenixes of Ulthuan dwell amongst the Flamespires, great alabaster pillars of rock that stand sentinel about the Shrine of Asuryan. These constantly burn with magical flame, for Akshi, or Ashki, the winter fire, gust about these rocks as it is drawn inexorably towards the Isle of the Dead. Yet, Ashki has left its mark on more than the silent stones. Over generations, the Phoenixes of the Flamespires have become attuned to fire magic, harnessing it at a whim. So it's interesting to think that these Phoenixes weren't actually flaming birds at one point. They were just birds who hung out there. So that's fun. So anyway, when a Flamespire Phoenix is enraged, its plumage explodes into a magical flame, causing the creature to leave a trail of angry fire in its wake. Should a Flamespire Phoenix be slain, it explodes, leaving naught behind but a shower of flaming cinders. If the winds of magic are at ebb, the creature perishes, as all living beings eventually must. Yet, if the air is sufficiently suffused with magic, the fiery fragments swiftly recoalesce, with a booming inrush of air and a flash of searing light. The Phoenix is reborn to fight anew. Flamespire Phoenixes lack the gift of a civilized tongue. However, they understand Elven speak well enough, and, if treated with proper respect, can be bargained with. Indeed, an accord exists between them and the Phoenix Guard, with the latter often calling upon the birds to serve as war mounts. This is a truly fearsome combination. The clear-headed judgment of the Phoenix Knight directing the Flamespire's fires to where they can cause the most damage. Now, it doesn't say how, because Phoenix Guard can't talk. So the fact that Phoenixes can understand Elven speak, but Phoenix Guard can't talk. Anyone have any ideas? Because, I don't know, what, Phoenix Guard psychic? I have no idea. That seems strange to me, but let's not knock it, because you don't really want to ask any of them those questions. Not that they can answer it, because none of them can speak, but also because they're scary, and let's not talk to them. Anyway, so, one thing that's kind of cool is Phoenixes as a mount option. That's not something we currently have in Total War Warhammer, but the rules in tabletop, if the rider hasn't been killed already, because you can actually attack riders and mounts separately in the tabletop, which, you know, they're just one unit in Warhammer Total War. But anyway, the Flamespire Phoenix will, if it's killed, it'll come back to life, and its rider will come back to life too, with all of its wounds intact, which I think is damn cool. So yeah, that's pretty rad. Also, it's slightly different from in Warhammer, where you've got in Total War Warhammer, where you've got so it's like a 50-50 whether it'll just die or come back to life. It's actually, you roll every turn until it's either dead or comes back. So a 1 to a 2, so it's on a d6, of course. If you roll a 1 or a 2, it's dead, and that's sad. But if you roll a 3 to a 5, it basically just incinerates everything nearby. It's still on the ground, still dead, you know, ish. But it just incinerates stuff near him, so you can just keep incinerating anything near him for a few turns if you keep rolling between a 3 and a 5. But if you roll a 6+, then yeah, it's going to come back to life, which is pretty damn cool. So the idea of it basically just incinerating everything nearby, you know, before coming back to life is pretty cool. You could use it as a bomb if you think it's going to die. Just send it something expensive and let it explode. It's pretty cool. So yeah, very interesting units, I think. Oh, also the that bombard attack that they have, it's not quite how it works in tabletop. You just walk over stuff, you just fly over stuff, and it sets them alight. You know, it's just a constant thing. It's just always trailing fire behind it. But I like the bombard thing. It makes sense, and it's balanced. You know, so you just can't do it forever. So anyway, the other phoenixes though are the Frostheart Phoenixes, which is pretty rad. So as the Flamespire Phoenix ages, its body cools and even begins to sap heat from its surroundings. Finally, the plumage that once blazed with fire grows heavy with frost and ice. Once this occurs, the Phoenix must leave the Flamespires, for the chill that surrounds it causes agony in its brightly burning kin. Most such Frostheart Phoenixes dwell in lonely exile on crags about the Aetane coast, until their bodies finally freeze solid, to leave curious frozen statues along the crags and cliff tops. That's pretty cool. Others return to the Shrine of Asuryan to offer their final days in service as war steeds. These guys are cool. I like phoenixes. They got a lot of personality. Anyway, whilst a Frostheart Phoenix may not possess the vigour and fire it commanded in its youth, it is much hardier mount. The ice that sheathes its form is as hard as glass, and enemies, not having the benefit of the rider's enchanted armour, find their own strength and resolve eaten away by the chill presence. Knowing that they can no longer resurrect themselves in magical fire, the Frostheart Phoenixes fight even harder in the defence of their homeland, determined to end their existence, striking a final blow against the enemies of Ulthuan. Strangely nationalistic, these birds, but man, they are cool. It is just, oh, I love it. It is very interesting. So, that's the stuff that hangs out at the Shrine of Asuryan, and some scary stuff too. So, the last thing I want to talk about is actually more Phoenix Guard. Yes, there's more. There's Caradrian. He's the captain of the Phoenix Guard. So I want to end this episode on him. So, Caradhrian was an arrogant lordling in his youth. Handsome, rich, powerful, and conceited. He was the very archetype of the jaded high elf aristocrat. There was no rumour he would not foster, no intrigue to which he would not stoop. By all accounts, his petty nature was such that even his family would have long ago cast him out, were it not for the fact that such an act would have been a break with all tradition. Caradhrian's life changed when he made a pilgrimage to the shrine of Asuryan, a journey which all high elf nobles are expected to undertake at least once. There, in perhaps the worst display of arrogance in his life, Caradhrian stole into the holy chamber of days. What he witnessed there, no one knows, but when he emerged he was a changed man. On his forehead was the glowing rune of Asuryan, marking him as the servant of the Creator God. On that day, Caradhrian gave up all of his worldly possessions and took the vows of the Phoenix Guard. He has not uttered a word ever since. Caradhrian spends long days in secluded meditation, reading the fiery letters that tell of the past, the present, and the future. At other times, he stands atop the walls of the shrine, his keen gaze scouring the lands of Ulthuan. Indeed, it is said that no event is so small as to invade Caradhrian's gaze, and no sound small enough to escape his hearing. Some have accused him of harnessing the prophecies of Asuryan in order to influence the future, a transgression against the Creator God ranked amongst the highest of blasphemies. However, the truth of the matter is that Caradhrian simply notices things that others do not, and has no prattling tongue to distract him from matters of great import. Over his long years of study and contemplation, Caradhrian has become ever closer to the thoughts of Asuryan, until finally the hand of the Creator marked him as the captain of the Phoenix Guard. Now he leads the devoted guardians of Asuryan during times of peace and war. There is divine strength in his hand, and the wisdom of Asuryan sits upon his noble brow. Caradhrian normally fights at the head of the Phoenix Guard, as befits his rank, but sometimes conducts the battle from the back of Ashtari, oldest and wisest of the Phoenixes of the Flamespire. Theirs is a bond that goes back centuries, to Caradhrian's early days of service. At the Battle of Fanuval Plain, Ashtari picked up an unequal fight with the Black Dragon Korzorandar, and it was only Caradhrian's intervention that rescued the Phoenix from a grisly fate. Since those days, both Ashtari's flames and impetuousness have faded to naught, but his loyalty to Caradhrian burns as brightly as ever. So that's pretty damn cool. So the problem with, the Phoenix Guard is it's quite difficult for them to have too much personality, because they're all mute. But I like the idea of Caradhrian just being this, like, selfish douchebag in his early years, and suddenly just, seeing past, present, and future, on the walls of this holy place, suddenly just, turned him around. And he turned into this devout person, and made friends with a awesome Phoenix. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. But, again, he is mute, so he's not going to come out with many quips. Okay, I lied, I'm not finishing with that. What I want to talk about now is actually a magic item. And again, we're talking about Yvresse. We mentioned Moranion, who was Altharian's father. And he's got a thing. There's a magic item of his, which is actually mentioned here. It's an item you can just give, your units. It's one of the magic items that the elves have, but it's specifically named after him. So, may as well talk about it, right? So, Moranion's Way Shard. In the days of his youth, Moranion of Atilla wandered the realm of Yvresse as one of its mistwalkers. Few could tread the fog-wreathed paths so surely as he, for he bore a way shard attuned to the great waystone at the realm's heart. Thus did Moranion walk the demon-haunted mists as easily as he would have done under clear skies, leading ambushes of spear and bow to destroy the invaders. Though Moranion now sleeps eternally, his way shard still glimmers with power. Those who can unlock its secrets will never again find themselves lost, no matter how far they might stray. So the fun thing with that is, I don't actually know if it's in Total War Warhammer. I kind of hope it is, because it gives him and a unit, which he has to sort of be combined with, but I'm assuming it would just be an item you could give to a unit in Total War Warhammer. Anyway, it gives the Ambusher's special rule. So essentially, Vanguard deployment. How cool is that? Just because they can traverse the place so effortlessly, they can always find, a way to ambush someone, which I think is really interesting. So that's a really cool item for, a guy who seemed pretty cool, but we don't really know much about him. We know more about his son, who's really badass. and, you know, rides Stormwing. I mean, you can't really compete with that. But still, you know, his name lives on in, you know, in his way shard, which is pretty cool. So, guys, that'll be it for today's episode. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, please do comment, like, and subscribe. And of course, if you know anyone who is obsessed with Warhammer lore, then maybe they'll enjoy this series. So consider sharing it with your friends. So as I send my noble off to go discover distant lands, because basically I want to trade with some humans, because you know that's something that Finnabar does, right? Trade with humans, so I want to be able to do that. It's more lore friendly that way. So good incursion. Anyway, guys, like I said, comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good day, guys.